Wound care. I have a magical thing that I've invented in my brain to think about wounds that I haven't seen in any textbook anywhere, but it's worked for me. So I think about wounds on kind of a spectrum, specifically how to figure out what sort of dressings or bandages I should use on what wounds. On one end of the spectrum, I have infection. On the other end of the spectrum, I have bleeding. And why do I think about it this way? Generally speaking, when you have a wound, the more it bleeds, the less you're worried about infection. The less it bleeds, the more you're worried about infection. So I think about it kind of maximum infection risk and maximum bleed risk, and then everything kind of ends up somewhere on the wound spectrum in my brain. Why care? Dressings and bandages. This is a dressing. This is not a lot of dressing. This is a thin, not going to go very far, not going to be needing a lot more than this for a big wound style dressing. What is a dressing? A dressing is something that you put on a wound to cover it, to soak up blood, protect it from infection, etc. So if I have a massive gash on my arm or something, and I put the dressing on top of it, the idea is that this is going to soak up blood and then kind of not really stick to, but keep to this wound to try to make it so I don't have open blood going everywhere and stuff getting inside wound, all that. Dressing. Now, what's a bandage? Bandage, and I have some sort of bandage here. A bandage is anything that you use, pretty much, that secures this dressing to the wound. So if I have dressing and I have bandage, I can secure this. Tie it, use tape, whatever. That's the basic idea. Using a triangular bandage. Okay, so in first aid kits, you'll often have these really big triangular bandages. They call them triangular bandages because they're a giant triangle. This is a square that's been cut in half, basically. So if you ever have a really big square or a rectangle, you can get to this shape. This shape is used a lot in first aid to make slings and bandages and all sorts of stuff. And in a lot of the first aid kits in Canada, these are standard and are always included, so we train with them a lot. If you don't have this, any sort of large fabric, jacket, shirt, whatever, folded enough times into this sort of shape, you can do the same sort of thing, or you can fold it to meet the same purpose. Stuff you can do with triangular bandages. The first thing I want to show you is how to make this into basically a long strip. They're what we call broad bandages and narrow bandages. I basically only use broad bandages for most things in first aid, but narrow bandages have some niche uses. The point of with a broad bandage, to make a broad bandage, you put this thing flat straight out. Normally you'd be putting it on a table or the floor or something, so you would arrange it flat. Let's just grab that. Like so, and then I'm going to do it 90 degrees from this on me, and then what you're going to do is you're going to fold from the point to the base. And then do it again, same fold one more time in half. And you've got a long, broad strip. And we'll show you here, we've got a long, broad strip end to end. Now, broad bandages, very, very useful. They're going to be used to secure a dressing to the arm, for example. So arm has been injured and you put it over top and then you secure it. They're used to secure the limbs of the body to the body in bone and joint injuries for splints. So I can sling the arm and stick it up like that, and then I could, for example, cup. This is going to be not done on somebody else later, but we could cup the elbow, right? This is very impractical to do on myself. This is quite impractical. I'm going to have to kind of figure this out. We would be cupping the elbow, right? I'm bringing this across the body to force the body in. We could be cupping the arm and tightening it and forcing the arm to stop this sort of motion. So this sort of motion would be prevented. It would be stuck in. There's all sorts of things you can do to immobilize limbs if something's broken, or to bandage a dressing if something's bleeding, whatever. Broad bandages are used for a lot. There's slings. Now, when we're doing slings, you'll see longer demonstrations to explain how to do specific ones. But the general rule with these is you want a giant triangle, and you want to lay it on the person with the base vertical and the point sticking out. Right, so you have an end up top, an end down there, point sticking out, vertical base, and then the injured side, which is usually an arm, the elbow of that should be at the point. So the point should go to that elbow. Now, one sling is going to be underneath, starting like this. The other sling is going to be over top with the arm elevated. So we'll see a bit closer here. We have the arm elevated in this, points over there. Conversely, arm here, points over there. Same type of idea. Those are the like starting points for slings. You use the triangle for that. It's triangle bandages, basically, in a nutshell. You'll see more specifics on how to use them later. Very, very versatile bandage. Very easy to use. Other than that, there are all sorts of other bandages and dressings that you can use. All sorts of inventive stuff you can do. Shirts you rip and then bandage, whatever. You can be really inventive with this stuff. Band-Aid. Band-Aid's a brand. You're looking for adhesive dressings. So let's take a look at this for a second. So we've got that, right? Now the idea here is that you've got the dressing in the middle that goes on top of the wound, and then you've got the bandages that stick the dressing together. So I've got an arm, I've got a thing, the Band-Aid secures the dressing with the bandages, okay? So this is a dressing and a bandage put together. We've got our Band-Aid. We also have dressing and bandage, okay? There are many different types of dressings. There are many different types of bandages. You want to make sure you have the right thing for the right job. If you have massive bleeding, so I'm talking about, cut to the arm or something and it's just gushing everywhere. You don't care as much about how clean the dressing is. You care a lot more about how absorbent it is or about how much of it you have. A great makeshift dressing, if you don't have anything else around, would be menstrual pads. What's the purpose of a menstrual pad? Think about it. It absorbs large amounts of blood, especially if you get, higher levels, extra strength. What are we using these for? What do they come in? Sealed, sterile containers that you can open and apply on. Now, if you are using makeshift menstrual pads as dressings in a first aid emergency, it's probably a good idea to not put the sticky end on top. There's an adhesive portion and there's a non. You don't just put the sticky part there, put the dressing part there, which is a good idea. Now, why am I mentioning menstrual pads so often? Look, if you're in a crowded environment, you're in a mall, you're at the mall and some situation happens and there's blood. Is there a woman nearby? If there is, there's a good chance, if there's many, because it's a mall, there's people in a mall, that there's menstrual pads. Hey, someone's bleeding. Does anybody have a pad? They come over with one, they hand it to you. Okay, like it's makeshift stuff can make it work. If you don't have a first aid kit, maybe you can kind of make a first aid kit using the people around you, right? Now, let's say you've got a severe burn. So the area's burned. It's not bleeding everywhere, but the area's been burnt away. The edges of you have been cauterized, or there's not a lot of blood. Don't really care about having a dressing that soaks up a lot of blood. Care more about having a dressing that makes it so you don't get infected. That's what you're looking for. What am I looking for? Something that's sealed. Now, let's say you have a dressing in a package and you're trying to not make it dirty. There's going to be an arrow usually on top of these that'll tell you where the high end, where the top of it is. That'll tell you how you can, you can see here, there's like a fold, right? You can grab the end of the corner on this and start peeling, and you can get inside of this dressing. You can open it up. Now, what you can ideally do is peel all this off. You have an open area. So I have sealed peel on, no, if it's bloody, it sticks, on and then peel off, right? That's the idea. Now, if I'm doing this with two hands and not one on somebody else, it's a bit easier, but on, and then you can peel it off and then attach. If you can do that in under 10 seconds, your chance of getting stuff in this before it gets on the person gets much lower. It takes you longer, it takes you longer. Paramedics generally have standards on this sort of thing where they have to do it at a certain speed, but if you're not a paramedic, whatever, do what you can. If you're dealing with a severe bleed where there's just blood going everywhere, the gloves are more important so that you don't catch something. Frankly, they're losing so much blood that whatever infected material that's being introduced to that wound is probably just being pumped out of it by the blood anyways. If you're dealing with somebody who has a burn or has one of those, a minor wound where the infection risk is higher, the gloves become more and more important for you to not infect them. So just keep that in mind. I would still wear gloves anyways, but I focus a lot more on, I definitely make sure that I have gloves when I'm dealing with burns as opposed to the bleeds. The bleeds, it's protecting me mostly that I'm concerned with it. Okay,